No, he's a libertarian. Presidential nominee Gary Johnson has just scored what could be his biggest endorsement yet. The iconic conservative newspaper, the New Hampshire Union Leader, which for the first time in 100 years is not going with a Republican nominee, in this case, Donald Trump. The paper's editors say they chose Johnson and his running mate Bill Weld because, and I quote, "In today's dark times, they are a bright light of hope and reason." And speaking of reason, with us now, it's editor-in-chief of Reason.com and Reason TV, Nick Gillespie, and he's joined by the inimitable National Review reporter and the Greg Gutfeld Show correspondent, Kat Timpf. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
This is fun. I've got so much liberty coursing through my veins right now.
Right.
First the judge and now the two of you, black and blue. So how big of a deal is this in the grand scheme of libertarian presidential landscape?
I think at this point, Gary Johnson and Bill Weld have about 400% more newspaper endorsements than Donald Trump and whoever his vice president is. I keep forgetting. The downside is that it doesn't really count for much, but I think it's a bellwether of, people are tired of the status quo, and at this point you have 40% basically for Hillary, 40% for Donald Trump. There's 60% of the country out there that is disappointed with the choices, and I think Johnson and Weld are not simply the other guys, but they actually are offering a radically alternative program of smaller government and more individual choice.
Do you think with these newspaper endorsements, because Winston-Salem Journal, the Times-Dispatch, they've both endorsed Johnson along with the Union Leader now, will it affect the polling at all, and is it enough to get Johnson on the main stage of the presidential debate?
I don't think so, unfortunately. I think that it's a great thing, obviously. And I understand it, too. Even if you've always endorsed the Republican candidate, if you are endorsing Donald Trump, you don't know who or what you're endorsing. He's constantly changing his mind about this and that. And if you're a Republican and you're one of these people that say they're small government, I have issues with Republicans saying they're small government, but that's a different thing. But, I mean, this dude's Donald Trump, this dude being Donald Trump, sounds like a fascist like half the time. So I would understand why.
That's the good side.
That's the good side, yeah. I would understand why you wouldn't want to say, if you endorse Donald Trump and all of a sudden something terrible happens again, and then you say, you endorse this guy, it's really just, what other choice do you have?
Well, I mean, the terrible things.
If I can say real quick, he also is, Johnson and Weld were endorsed by the Richmond Times-Dispatch, which is the largest newspaper in Virginia. It's in the capital. And they said, these guys sound like the future of one of the two parties. And I think that that's true because, we're out of money, and the government is going to have to stop spending as much money as it has been for all of the 21st century. And these guys are talking about, having a good defense, but not an offensive military that just goes all over the place and bombs things or occupies things, and providing a social safety net while creating smart regulation that allows more businesses to flourish rather than smothering them. And either the Democrats or the Republicans are going to pick up stuff
Trump
from
is always talking about spending. He's like, VA hospitals, build the best ones. I want to make cuts to Medicare, Medicaid. He doesn't talk about small government.
No, he does not talk about entitlement reform, and they both talk about, I mean, that's how Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are identical. And I think the Times-Dispatch is right on when they say it could be one of the two parties, because if Democrats were smart, they would really zone in on this, and they're not. And it's surprising because Gary Johnson is taking away more voters from Hillary Clinton than she is from Donald Trump.
I hate when people say a vote for, and by people I mean like people on Twitter mostly, they're like, a vote for Gary Johnson, a vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm like, well, that's literally not true, because her lead shrinks when it's a four-way race instead of a two-way race.
Including in the CBS New York Times poll where she was ahead by 2, but then when you factor in all 4 candidates, she and Donald Trump then become dead even.
Well, this is where the Democratic Party doesn't understand that if they want to be a party of kind of liberal values, of letting individuals live however they want, people like Johnson and Weld are actually, they're the only ones who are in favor of more legal immigration. They're not pussyfooting around about that. They're about getting they say we have trouble delivering things for our own people here. How are we going to rebuild Iraq or Syria or whatever? They're actually very much, they're in favor of marriage equality. They're in favor of abortion rights. They're in favor of drug legalization and criminal justice reform. They are the liberal candidates. And then the way you're talking about it, they're also the conservative candidates. They're the only ones who are talking about actually cutting government spending from this year to the next.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, too, that Hillary Clinton is by far the most hawkish person in this race.
Isn't that funny?
People don't talk about that. She's not this liberal.
The only person who points that out is Jill Stein on a regular basis. And
she's the only one, and people don't. And it's so glaring the way that she even says, when in Libya we'd have a situation like in Syria if I didn't do what I did, and I hear that and I'm like, oh, so you do want to get more involved in Syria, more intervention there too?
Donald Trump a pointed question on Twitter saying, you know, what would you have done about Gaddafi? And it's like, the guy you killed?
And you know, now it's a vacuum that is being filled by jihadists. I think it's important to look at, you know, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are the last you know, kind of emblems of 20th century America. They are not particularly different from each other. They're about command and control, not about people being given choices to work within a certain field. And, you know, this is either of these parties. One of them is going to lose big, and they're going to have to move more in the direction of Johnson and Weld to be relevant.
Yeah, and we'll see if they are able and self-aware enough to reinvent themselves. Nick and Kat, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
It's going to be a sitcom coming to your mini screen next fall. But coming up straight from your heart to my hard drive. Time for viewer mail. Like this one from Jeffrey. Kennedy, when are we going out? Never. Stay here.